all good.
Keep going. All right.
Yeah. So similarly enough, I was just saying that's something that I'm actually like using as a tool, like just asking one question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little very open-ended, but a little
Yeah.
vague too. So it kind of allows the person to have their own perspective. And it's something like people love to talk about themselves because it's what they know the most. Like they're with themselves
Right.
all day, so
Right.
they
Right.
know themselves a little better than answering any other question. So my
Mm-hmm.
question is like, what do you love to do, or what are you passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that's the same thing. Some people, it's different. Some people have no idea what that is for them. And when they don't know, that still intrigues me because I'm in a place where I like to guide people into discovering that answer.
Yeah.
Like, let me coach you into, mental health, having a healthy mind, a peace of mind, by figuring out that thing that you desire most, that brings you the most joy, that brings you peace. Even if it's just something small right now and you don't see it, having some large effect, it may
Yeah.
lead into something that does have a large effect.
Okay.
Like you may like, for me, like I love to, not really having a green thumb per se, but along the lines of that, like I love planting, I love fresh herbs, like, and so ultimately I know I want like to have this academy that serves youth, but within that academy, my hotspot may just be the garden, may just be like the green thumb area,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that may be it. And so for other people, it's like you may think like this thing is so small, but it may be connected to that larger vision. And
Right.
honestly, if you love this thing, if you're truly passionate about it, it's going to, if not be the thing that you are sent here to do, then it is going to guide you to it. It's going to lead you to it quicker than anything else will. It's still along those lines. Is my understanding personally.
Yeah.
So that's why I love to ask
Gotcha.
the question. And it could just be like, I love riding my bike. Okay, cool. Like, what are you doing to nurture that? Because we
Right.
don't really give ourselves self-care in ways other than like bubble baths and massages most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like self-love is that discipline of telling yourself, hell no. Like, we're not doing that today. I love you
Right.
too much to let you do that. And it's an easy thing to do, but
Yeah.
that is self-love. And so I don't know, for you personally, do you feel like you have a good understanding of like what it is you love to do, what it is you're passionate about?
I have. It's like I flip flop from time to time. It's like sometimes I have an idea of what I love to do, or I enjoy doing things in the moment. Like I
Right.
know I definitely enjoyed spending quality time with people and really having like meaningful conversations with like people that you care about or people that are just like willing to share to where you just have like that open dialogue like this.
Here
Yeah,
you are doing a podcast.
right.
I mean,
That's,
who would
and
have
it's like,
guessed, Asher? Who would have guessed?
so I mean, I got the idea for this whenever I think Nikki had mentioned it, and she maybe was just like joking with me. It's like, okay, what are you doing here? You interviewing people now? It's like because like
Nice.
something had come up where it's like, hey, does anybody have a question on the social media call? And it was like, okay,
Right.
I've got a question, but then like
Right.
maybe one question turned into two or three, and it's like, whoa, like this is
Right.
this isn't that kind of
It's not the platform. It's not.
right. This isn't that platform. But I'd say
But
it's
it like
definitely
planted that seed of like,
yeah,
that may
yeah.
be. Yeah, that's nice. That's
I think
beautiful.
I want to say that was last year, and then that idea just kept sitting there, and it just kept kind of like nagging and gnawing. And then when I
Yeah.
saw somebody that I knew like doing it extremely well, I was like, okay, like I want to
It
do
gave
that.
life to it,
But
like
yeah,
water that seed almost. Like, okay,
right,
I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
That's beautiful.
And then on the flip side of that, you have like what are you not passionate about? One thing, it was funny as I'm kind of looking to like pivot careers a little bit. I
Mhm.
started listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad yesterday, just driving. Are you familiar with that book?
I am. I have not finished it. Do not tell
Gotcha.
anybody.
No, you're good.
I feel like I should have by now.
Did you? I
But
mean,
because you're reading it now, we're gonna finish it together. Okay, I'm gonna
gotcha.
finish struggling. All right. What
How
chapter are you on?
far in are you?
I ask you first.
Okay. Well, I believe I'm maybe at the first or the second chapter where it's talking about the first of the 6 rules that says rich people do not work for money, and just kind of
Mm,
like breaking that down.
yeah.
And I just thought it was funny because the way it highlighted it, where you have the author, he's telling the perspective, he's telling the story when he was a little kid, and kind of like how they were set up to learn to become rich, and they kind of got a taste of what it was like to be an employee, like many
Right.
people are for like years and years. And like some of the same complaints that they came up with were just like, oh, okay, like you're a slave driver, or you're cheap, like you're
Yeah.
just this or you're that. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess that could be true if that's how you want to feel about it. So I think
Yeah.
one of the things that stood out for that was that if you believe that somebody else is the problem, then it's going to stay that way. But
Mhm.
if you believe that whatever life kind of throws at you, that you're the problem, then you can change yourself and like
Mhm.
either circumvent the obstacle or kind of find a way around it or go through it.
Yeah, I think it's all about making adjustments. But the thing is, you really can't control other people or circumstances. Really, things are going to happen how they're going to happen. It's a matter of your response, your reaction, what you initiate, what you have boundaries for, what you allow to happen.
Mhm.
And that's where you come into play. Like, you have nothing to do with it. Like, even when it comes to the way people think about you, I've heard this from so many mother figures of mine. Like, the
Yeah,
way people think about you and their opinions of you, it's none of your business.
right.
And I was like I've always been taken back by that, and the fact that it keeps coming up, it's just like, okay, I really need to receive this. Like, it's none of your business of how people see you,
Right.
whether they love you or they can't stand your guts. Like, that has nothing to do with you. What has to do with you is you doing your best, letting God do the rest. Like, you not playing
Yeah.
God, and you also not playing down to any lower level for any other reason. Like, you're doing the best that you can and holding yourself to that standard. And
Mhm.
a lot of times I find myself, like, quote unquote, being my own worst critic because I see my potential beyond where I'm at. And so I'm always never satisfied. Like, I'm always like, this is never enough. And I think a
Yeah.
big part of that is, of course, because I can see my potential better than anyone else. I can see the times that I didn't show up and give 120%. Not everybody else can tell because, my 120, maybe somebody else is like 400%. Like that.
Right. Right.
It's like, my 120, maybe somebody else is 60%. And so I can't look at it at like comparing with everybody's progress either. It's a matter of, or comparing with everybody's opinion of my progress, but me also giving myself credit of, I know what I've been through. I
Mhm.
know what it took for me to get here. I know how many miracles came into play. I know how many different thought processes I had to go through and how many changes I had to make to get to a place where I can stand here today and be like, yo, this is who I am now,
Right.
because of this situation and that situation, and being able to honor that. Because there's sometimes, people look at me and they honor my progress more than I do. And I'm like, dang, they honor things about me that I'm like, well, that's just, I mean, I
Yeah.
was just born into that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they value certain things about me that I'm like, why don't I value that? And sometimes we do get numb to or immune to, who we are. And I
Right.
think a big part of that process of saying, even going back to your original statement on, rich people aren't out here chasing money. Like, that's not how they get rich. And it,
Mhm.
it goes back into like valuing yourself so much that you invest in that you nurture that you care for that in such a way that attracts money. Money just
Right.
comes with the package. That's just a benefit.
Mhm.
Like, just like if you were to get insurance, like your health is covered, you get other benefits, like the less in price of your medication and stuff like that, like you when
Right.
it
Right.
getting to see the value of yourself, you also get to reap the benefits of, okay, there's more to where I'm at right now than what I'm receiving or accepting. And
Mhm.
then you get to the next level. You can't jump into the next level without appreciating where you're at. And that's
Right.
tough because it's easy to look around and be like, life sucks, because in many ways it does. But you can't give all that energy into what sucks and not energy into, this is the progress. This is actually what's working right. This is going in the right direction. I probably got like a little off track there, but
No, you're good. I mean, we're just having a conversation, but I mean, I think what you said is important, and it's funny because, like, with anything, I always one of my bosses used to say this all the time, and it always just kind of frustrated me because I just took it personal for some reason, and he would say this thing that like perception is reality, and I would be like, is it really though? Because it's like sometimes like the context in which he was using it was that we have to be aware of like how we work and how we present ourselves to the client, because it's like they're looking constantly for a reason to get rid of us. And if it's like, if for any reason someone isn't where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, or if you just see people like half doing things, then they can point to that and say, oh, you guys weren't doing what you were supposed to do. You were either like at break too long, or you have people standing around not working, something like that. And a lot of times I guess I just took it personal because I felt like I knew I wasn't just like hanging around, and I could maybe look around and point to the people that were. And it was just one of those where when you think about it, it's like you said, some things you just have to let them like pass over you, and you can't let everything be personal. Like you can't get offended by what people say.
right. Easier said than done.
Yeah. But I mean that's why it always seems important, or it is important to have like other people to bounce things off of, to converse with, because like having somebody else to talk with outside of your own head kind of gives you that encouragement, that check, in a sense, like a reality check, to be like, okay, like no, I think you're just bugging out if you think that this is
Right.
that. So like something, although you may not see your progress, like a close friend or somebody that like sees you even in passing can just be like, oh hey, like you're looking good today, or like I noticed you've been working out, or something like that, to where it's like just that slight kind of encouragement, like you did with the guy with the dogs earlier, and he was like, oh, okay, like yeah, these are cool dogs. I'm just sitting out here or walking around here.
And sometimes it's not that you can't have this like peace of mind and this kind of ability to think things through. It's a matter of building that muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And even maybe you don't have, as you know, I haven't always been in a place where I feel comfortable to just speak out what craziness is going on in my head,
Right.
But it takes time to get to that place. And I hate to say that, because a lot of times it feels like this is an emergency. This is right now. There's no time to have time to build that muscle. But in that moment, you are building that muscle. Like that's part of the time, part of the process that it takes to get to the point where you can, have the communication that's clear enough to heal you, and also open enough to allow someone else to know something, allow someone else to be able to step up into their purpose and their gift as a friend or a family member, or whatever role, that is that they play in your life, allow them a chance to show grace and to show leadership. Like, don't rob other people of their blessing because you don't allow them to bless you, because those who bless get blessed, you know what I mean? But if you're like blocking them from helping you for whatever reason, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's just like, I don't have the energy to ask for help. You have to be mindful that that's also robbing someone else. And so you have to get to a place where even if you got to pull from like the depths of the depths, to get that little bit of strength.
Yeah.
But do communicate and to see where it goes, And that's why it's good to just open, candidly have conversations like this. We're like, okay, these are my thoughts. What do you think about this? It could be as random as I'll get out, but people receive stuff like that because it gets them out of the monotony of just being on a routine every day of the same stuff. So I would say like just in general, it took me a while to accept the fact that it's okay to communicate. And what you're talking about, like having that, getting out of your head, it's such a obvious thing to do and such a challenging thing to do when you're stuck in there. Now, once you're out of your head and you're already out and you're roaming and you're out here in these streets just having random conversations, cool. But and some people will never get to the point where it's just random conversation with just anybody. But when you're able to verbalize, what you're feeling,
Right.
sometimes those emotions don't have words. Because if you say it in one way or another, it's like it can't, it's inexplicable. So definitely, like, I guess finding a place to be comfortable communicating will be a number one 2020 goal,
Got you.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just saw a update come up from Zoom, and it was telling me that there's a limit apparently as to how long the conversation can go, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't think it was that long, but
yeah, they hooked it up now. They want to encourage you to pay for a subscription of some sort.
right. I mean, it makes sense because it's like you make it free for a while, and then it's like, well, guys, come on, like.
And then we make up great content like this, and they're like, hey, we want some credit here.
Right. It's like, you're on my platform. You got to chip in a little bit. Donate.
Right. That's understandable. All right, Zoom.
But I guess a question for you on what you just said there about, like, understanding the importance of communication. Have you ever found yourself to where, like, communication kind of becomes monotonous to where it's like you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over, and then like
and that was at a time where I was doing more talking than listening, where I was speaking a lot and I wasn't getting a lot out of it. I didn't realize, because I was seeking to be understood in my seeking to have understanding, because it's not like I didn't want understanding, but before I got understanding, I want people to see where I'm at first. Right. But people will gain their own perception, their own understanding, and speak to you from that point of view. And you have to kind of, receive that without feeling like people are not seeing you for you. They're just not seeing you for the you that you see. And nobody can walk through every step of your life and see you from the inside out. People are supposed to give you an outside in type of view because you already have that perspective. You don't need anybody's affirmation or confirmation and validation on how you see yourself. You have to accept that is okay. Whatever you see yourself as, that is valid in whatever way it is valid to you. If it's something you want to change it. You don't have to be happy with everything, but that view is your view, and seeing other people's view does not mean you kind of taint it with your perspective and, well, this is what I intended and this is what I meant and this is the place it came from. Because honestly, what you want to know is, without anybody being on the inside and them seeing you from here, what is it that you're putting out? Because communication is a two-way street. So you're in a moment that you make an action, you do something, you're not going to have time to say, hey, this is the root and this is my past and this is all these things that this come from and that's why this is about to happen, and then you react. No, you react. It just happens. And so you have to know who you're speaking to and understand that there is a receiving end of who you are and what you do. And in that communication, that's why for me, the communication at first was like, this is whack. There's plenty of times where I got great value out of it, and could use that conversation later on to make some adjustments. But there were plenty of times where it was just like, this is kind of pointless. Like, it's kind of not going anywhere. And I don't really feel fulfilled or
conversation
good. Great. Like,
you're saying that the conversation itself felt pointless? Like,
in a way, it was like, okay, I didn't get what I needed out of that.
Okay, because you're, like you said before, because you're seeking to be understood.
Right.
But it's like,
and sometimes I didn't like what people had to say, and I was like, that wasn't even what I was asking you. But instead of having an attitude about it, I had to learn to be like, this is my interaction with this person. This is a separate entity from what I'm trying to get out of life right now. you know, and maybe their response is just a piece of the puzzle to the big answer that I'm trying to get. Like, this is just the first part of the answer. And then
Yeah.
the next person I talk to gives me the second clue. And I put all these clues together. I'm like, okay, God, universe, like, this is my spiritual understanding of what's happening in my life right now. Because we can't
Right.
look to people to give us answers. They're human. They're people. Like, you know,
Well, I mean,
and I spent so much time seeking answers from people, especially if there was like a title I gave them, like my mother. I went to my
yeah.
mother about everything. Stuff she was just like, wait, that you keep that to yourself. And I was like, but I need to know.
Right.
You know? But sometimes you have to realize, like, just because you put people on a pedestal doesn't mean they have every answer you're looking for. It just means you value them in that light, you know?
Yeah. That's a good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah.
How
Tough.
long would you say it took you to kind of like get to that realization?
I didn't realize I was getting to that realization, first of all, when it was first happening. I just kept finding myself frustrated, bumping my head, frustrated. And eventually I kept sitting down a little longer and a little longer to the point where I started meditating. You know, I would sit down and just think and just ponder. I would write or have conversations about a conversation, trying to depict it with somebody else.
Right.
And eventually I got to a point where I could have a open-minded perspective, where I had more of a view outside of myself, where I could look at myself, look at other people, you know, from this perspective of just looking down at the whole situation as an entirety, give a 360 and say, okay, this is how I feel about it, in my opinion. This is what this person's in their opinion, you know. This is how it's affecting my situation or their situation, or circumstantially, this is what's happening. And not assigning fault or assigning blame. Like, and it took me a long time to stop doing that. I mean, years on years. What I'm giving you right now, probably a decade of understanding, evolving over time, you know, and more over time. Even still to this point, there's still some things that I'm like gaining clarity about. Like, sometimes you'll hear a statement, but then you hear it again 10 years later and you're like, that's what that meant, you know? Like, I thought I understood it then, but now it has a whole deeper meaning. Like, it still means that, but it's like a wider range of definition. And it's just been evolving over time with different experiences. So I think the way of getting there was sitting and listening and receiving and observing, and not putting so much, because I already know my own opinion. So what's the point of hashing on that so much? I don't need to hear that. Now, if somebody else needs and is asking for the understanding, I may not always be able to communicate it to them in a way that they see it the way I see it, but I can still communicate it, you know? And I will tell them, like, people get frustrated with me, like, well, this is what you're saying. I'm like, no, we're not saying the same thing. But I understand that that's how you see it, you know? And that could be very frustrating. But I got to a point where I'm not frustrated anymore, because I get perspective is perspective. That's what it is. Like, you're going to see with your lenses, you know, and depending on which glasses I'm wearing today, no pun intended, you know, I'm going to see it. I'm going to see with my lenses, and that's okay. Like, there's no harm in that, besides the fact that people feel like they have to be at odds if we don't think the exact same. You don't have to be at odds. You don't have to agree. Like, we're completely two separate different entities with two different histories and experiences. Like,
It's funny that you say that, because I know, like, everybody's been about this DISC assessment for the longest time, and it's like I always hear about it. And one thing that I got recently was like what is it? Like, I'm still in Breathe University in BU, and they kind of set up different calls so that, especially for the turtles and the chameleons, you kind of, since we like to understand things or understand other people, since that's our base, it's like they set up two different calls so that you can understand how C-type personalities work and how S-type personalities work. And I guess the C's, which are the turtles, or the what do they call them now? Flight coordinators or something like that. Basically, the people that like to have things in order. Like one thing that I think Regina had said since she runs the call, she said that um, sometimes as a turtle, you kind of have the facts and you like to work with facts. But if you're not careful, a lot of times a turtle will like to beat somebody over the head with the facts, especially if you're trying to make a point. And I feel like I kind of caught myself doing that yesterday because I was having a conversation and I was trying to explain to somebody that's maybe more so flamingo, or two different people that are more so flamingo. And I was trying to explain to them that, like, okay, we started the conversation here and then we slowly drifted over here and then we went here, we kind of just went all over the place. And I'm like, let's stay right here.
Yeah.
And I was like, since I kind of started the conversation, I said this, like, I forget what it was specifically about, but I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, here's a piece of information that I received today.
Right.
Like kind of like a little tip or whatnot. Basically speaking on how different people become self-aware, either by like hitting a glass ceiling, feeling like overanalyzing things in their heads because they're trying to gauge what other people are thinking without actually engaging with them, not
Right.
skip that I said that. But so you have different people with different perspectives understanding language differently or situations differently. So it's like trying to make the point, even saying it now, it just sounds like I already lost my train of thought. But basically, I was trying to say in short that when you're communicating with somebody, you have to understand that although you might be both speaking English, you may not be speaking the same dialect, to where like the words might be the same, but like the tone, the inflection, all of that may come across as like something completely different. So it's like if somebody tells you, hey, I want to go to the store, and you're like, okay, yeah, we can go to the store. But if you have is it like maybe an A-type personality versus a B-type personality, somebody that's like rigid versus somebody that's kind of just like easygoing. The person that's easygoing might be sitting there tapping their foot like, hey, I want to go now. Right. And then the other person is like, no, like, I understand that you said you wanted to go to the store, but you didn't tell me what time. And it's like, I've got other things to do besides going to the store with you.
Right.
It was like just a simple scenario like that. It's kind of like explaining it. It explains a viewpoint, but one thing that I had to realize was that in explaining myself, I have to allow the other person to receive it however they plan to receive it. So if their response to what I said isn't what I wanted to hear, I can't just come back to the fact and basically beat them over the head with a mallet, being like, this is what I said, repeat what I said, repeat. It's like, no, you're trying to turn somebody into you that's not you. And that's one of the things where it's like, after it happened on 2 different occasions, I was like, oh, I guess I probably need to stop running my mouth and go do what I was so happy to share about. So that's where I got into going online, trying to do a little bit of research on podcasting, or just doing some vocal exercises, which I've never done before, but that was something interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Kind of pushing yourself outside of that. This is the way I do things, and exercising your strategies. Yeah.
Right. Because it's like I could sit around and ask a million questions like, hey, how are you going to do this? Okay, what program? What software? What equipment. Okay, what's this person doing? What's that person doing? And it's like all the while I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of checking
not
here, checking
executing.
there, checking here, checking there. It's like you can only measure twice. Like at some point in time, you got to cut.
Yeah, yeah. And it can be challenging for people who aren't used to just cutting without making sure
Right,
order. But at some point, like you said, it has to be done. Otherwise, what are we really doing here?
right.
Yeah, then the purpose begins to change. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That self-awareness piece, like as much as we have the assessment, there are some things where I'm like, okay, now how do I self-assess? How do I measure this? Like, how do I put this on a scale of where I'm at versus where I like to be? How do I translate some of these things? Although some of those things are very obvious, even like the part of the assessment where it breaks down, okay, here are some traits that you have,
Yeah,
and you get to choose. Like, I did actually the deep dive with Shatora, so she broke it all the way down and
yeah,
made it not seem so much as like rocket science to figure out. Some stuff I thought was very simple, and then when she broke it down, I was like, oh, that's deep. Like,
right.
didn't realize the depth of that. But even with the part where it gives you those traits, she was like, okay, choose, the one that boom relates to you, the one that you would like to relate to you at some point. You want to see this growth. But then for me, with the self-assessment piece, is like, how do I close the gap? Like, because I'm here, this is where I'm at. I don't know how
Yeah,
to get to there, or I'd be there because that's where I prefer to be. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want. And so how to close that gap for me sometimes has been challenging.
yeah,
um like, I want to go from, let's say, like even the example you put out there, from planning all the time to executing. But
right.
I may be a person where execution doesn't come without planning, and
Mm.
planning doesn't come without replanning. So how do I skip that step, still have a peace of mind, and move into just getting it done?
But I
What is
mean,
the process of just getting it done? Me just getting
yeah,
it done isn't something I'm familiar with. You know what I mean? Like, it's like new territory altogether.
right,
And
right.
so I'm always trying to find okay, what is actually for me a positive or a negative, and then how do I close that gap? It may not be, because not such thing as the test showing you what's wrong with you, what's right with you. It's more so just showing you who you are. There's no right or wrong. It's just
Right.
being self-aware, so you know how to use it. You know how to apply it. And I'm like, okay, maybe I apply some of these things in the wrong way at the wrong times. you
Yeah.
know. And so
So I
just
mean,
like
since
I need a whole nother test, like
well, I
something
mean,
there to help
so
me.
maybe I didn't understand you right, but so say you said that you did the like you did the regular test and then you did the deep dive, right?
Right.
So then with that, since you're working with somebody and she asked you, um, like choose where you want to go, was that decision hard for you to make? Like say,
With
I want to
some of
go
them,
here.
yeah. Um, some of them it was really easy. I was like, I know exactly what I want to do. I just don't know how to do it.
Right, right. But just to stop you right there, I guess that I was gonna. That's um, that's what I wanted to ask you. It's like, so in choosing where you wanted to go, was it just one category or is it like multiple categories you had to choose?
With each, there was the 4 different categories. So, in your turtleism, where would you like to be? In your flamingoism, where would you like to be?
Oh, okay, okay, I see.
Yeah.
So
And
then I was gonna say, so then if you're working with somebody, and I would think that with her it would be like since she's certified in that uh, what do you call it?
yeah,
In
with
her
the disc
assessment.
assessment, she was
Just
actually certified with Chris,
yeah,
Daniel, and she also is a communication specialist.
right,
So, so she's really well versed in communicating this. It was just for me personally, I have a hard time seeing it because I already have this block up. Like, I'm not even good at that. That's not my
right.
thing. Like,
Well, I
how
mean
I do that,
that's what I was gonna say.
like,
That
how
if
can
you
I
know
do
that it's if you know that it's not your thing, so instead of maybe like getting caught up on what's not your thing. It's like, it's okay that it's not your thing. So then,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
say if you
There's
start
that, but
with
it's
the
like if
date.
you desire a change in yourself, then you kind of have to be either content with where you're at or create that change, you know?
Well, I agree with you, but I think like this is part of the reason that I wanted to like have this is part of the reason why I like podcasts, and
Yeah.
especially when I see something like the Joe Rogan Experience. Like, why it stands out to me is that whenever you're able to have like a free form conversation, you can kind of explore different ideas to where it's not just like, a lot of times we look at things as like it's either one option or the other, and
Mm-hmm.
like one option is good and the other is bad. But like
Yeah.
whenever you see somebody kind of break something down, it's not always like good versus evil, and it's like depending on who's telling the story or kind of like that perspective. It's like um I need to cut back on my likes. I'm sure I've said like
Oh no,
7
you
at
did.
this point.
I didn't even notice it. Now you said I'm be listening for
Yeah.
it.
So it used to be like bing.
Right, right.
But
Yep.
so if you have the desire, for instance, to say, I want to be more demanding, that's good. Like, you understand what you want. And similar to kind of similar to wanting to get a job. Like, if you want to get a job, it's like the interest there may be not necessarily the job, but it may be that you want to be able to like earn income. You want to like be able to make money. So it's like there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And it's like your desires are what your desires are. And I
Right.
think the reason why I mentioned that um, Shatora is helping you is because, like, since she's well versed in that area, she's better equipped to help you navigate. And then with you maybe allowing yourself to feel vulnerable to where you can say, hey, like, I want to go from A to B, but I don't know how to do 1, 2, 3. Like, if you
Right.
break it down, and then she can tell you, okay, well, if you want to be more of this, like, you need to follow somebody, like either physically or like watch somebody from afar that's like that
Do that.
over
Yeah.
there on the other
I
area, and
love
then
that
kind
because
of like
honestly, when you
mirror
surround
that.
yourself around certain people, you kind of incidentally pick up some of their traits,
Right,
like simple ways of them, the way that they communicate, because you learn how to communicate with them by using some of the language they use,
right.
because that's how they understand. And before you know it, you're speaking their language. It
Or you
may just
come back with an accent.
be different verbiage or whatever, but before you know it, it's now a part of how you communicate.
Right,
So I love that idea, that aspect of saying this is something I would like to achieve, on a personality trait wise, and then look around yourself and see who are people that carry these traits and how
right.
do I observe them a little closer, whether that be let me check their social media page on a daily, whether that be let me shoot them a text and see if we can
Yeah,
hang out, once a month, whatever, like
right.
uh, just to actually have that involvement. That's a dope idea. I like that. Just involving
Well,
people who
I,
carry that trait.
I can't necessarily claim that idea myself. I just know that I got it as part of the mastermind call yesterday, because
No.
that's what the theme was on. It was talking about self-awareness, or at least awareness as it relates to like relational awareness, because
Mm-hmm.
what they've done differently with the format is really um, bring in all perspectives of the disc assessment,
Right.
because before you just had like that's the flamingo, he's the energy person, like he's
Yeah.
there to motivate you, inspire you. It's like you get your week started, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go do it. But then for some of us, it's like, when you think about it, it's like, I'm gonna do it, but how am I gonna do it? Like, what am I doing again? And you
Yeah.
kind of like you're kind of just like trying to take off with the excitement, but like the excitement isn't enough to keep you in the air and keep you afloat. So then I
Because you
think,
have other needs, like the way you're fueled is a little differently. And what
right,
fuels you may be details. What fuels you may be, the process of the execution. Like, yeah.
exactly. And then, so then what I noticed that they did especially was that once they brought in Carl, Carl is he's more of a chameleon. He's like the S-type personality that's concerned about people. I think once they switched up that format, they brought him in and they brought in Kendall. That's the D personality. So he's the gorilla. He's the driver. So whenever they went, they changed the format to where it wouldn't just be people just giving updates about what they're doing, what they did last week, or what they're going to do this week. But it made it as to, okay, this call has a specific purpose. We're going to highlight one topic. And with that topic, we'll teach on it and then we'll take questions. And then once you get the question, it's like you have three people that are able to answer now because they've all been trained and they all understand, like they all have a different perspective. So
Right.
somebody ask a certain question that needed a gorilla answer, they would get that direct answer. That's like, boom, you need to do this. And then if you needed some encouragement, like E would come in with the encouragement. If you needed the like the relational for somebody that's more in the background, like Carl would tell them, it's like, hey, this is what's going on. Like the way that you're feeling, like I've felt the same thing. But now they brought on Mustafa, and he's really helped like put like boundaries, put like really frame things correctly. Because in being able to take a topic, he's able to put it like he's able to frame it correctly and just say, this is the topic. If we're talking about self-awareness, maybe this might be something that we talk about for 3 weeks. Because in my mind, I understand that I can get you from A to Z, and this is step one, this is step two, this is step three. And then as other people kind of chime in, it's like, okay, like he's already planned for that. And then now when I got off the call yesterday, I was able to get off with a game plan of I'm going to do this. Like I'm going to be more self-aware because I know where I'm at. I know what I would like to have, whether it's a career or building a business. And I know that, okay, in order to build this business, if I want to use social media, there's a place where I can go to get the information to say, okay, here's the software I need to use. Here's how I edit the video. Here's how I do this. But then the other part of it that I haven't been doing was taking action on what has already been taught. So I know last week when they had the media call, the big thing that was highlighted was how to create a video and make multiple types of content from that one video. So I went ahead and I did that. I did something last week and then I did something yesterday, and now we're doing this now. And I tried my hand at editing, and it was like, okay, this is gonna take a while for me to get like a 30-second clip. I was like dragging and dropping. It maybe took like 3 hours, and I was like, this is why nobody sees you like studying or like working at your office job unless it's just like on a time lapse and you're like sitting here doing this, and you get up and you go get some water, you come back, you eat your lunch, and then you're just running around. But it's like the reality of it is like whether you're a comedian, you're a motivational speaker, an athlete, like everybody works and everybody has their own process. But like back to your point, the desire is kind of like a driving force to them, and it can be good or bad. It just depends on how you look at it and what it does for you.
Yeah.
Hope I'm not putting you to sleep.
No, it's not you. It's this meal and this Tylenol. I'm getting sensitive, and this heat in addition to that. But you
Yeah,
making me
I was
feel
gonna
like
say, cut your car on
I could, sure could. But yeah,
before you
I feel
pass
like you
out.
gave me homework though.
Well, I mean, so then just so that we can recap, if you know, like the one thing I would say is just focus on one thing. So if you're gonna work on one trait today, just think
Right.
back on that. You know where you want to go. You know where you're at, and I would find one person that kind of embodies that trait that does it very well and makes it work to their advantage.
Exactly.
And then just do that, observe them, and try to pick out one thing. And
Yeah, I love that idea.
if you want to be cheeky about it, you can be cheeky about it, but they might turn around and be like, "What are you doing? You following me, or what's going on?"
Yeah, yeah. I already told Nikki like I'm gonna need some shadow her days. Like
Yeah,
not that I get into the digital media world, but just like I have a thing where I do care too much about what other people think, and she has a thing where like she probably doesn't care enough about what other people think, like she does Nikki, but she's caring in the same respect. So I want to
yeah,
know how that harmony looks in her life, and just kind of
right.
apply some of that balance in my own. But
I think that would definitely help you out, especially if it's like if there's something going on in Atlanta. That way, it's like you can go maybe volunteer for the event and just like
right,
shadow her like that. That way, it's like you're not having to switch up what you're doing or what she's doing, and it's like you're helping her as well as like you're helping yourself. Like, oh, okay,
right,
like this is how they go. Because one thing Carl mentioned is that he basically had a guerrilla boot camp day with Kendall, where um, him and Kendall they're hanging out one day, and Kendall was just like, "All right, what do you want to eat?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't care, whatever you want." He's like, "No, what do you want to eat?" He's like, "Man, it doesn't matter to me." And he's like, "Okay, well, here's what's gonna happen. Until you decide what we're gonna eat, we're gonna stay hungry." And he's like, whenever I heard that, I was like, "Crap, that's a good point." Because it's like if you want to be,
Snapchat chameleonism, huh? Makes you want to go into guerrilla mode and make a decision.
yeah, because I mean, a lot of times it's like I'll find myself in that situation. If somebody asks me what I want to eat, I usually don't care too much. But it's like if they ask, I'll try and just be like, okay, let's go here. Let's grab this. That way, it's like I get used to making decisions to where it's like
Yeah,
you.
like
It's helpful to
exercise that.
be decisive because it's like sometimes you try to be too like too cautious.
Yeah.
So it's always like situational. Sometimes you got to be cautious on some things. Other times it's like you just got to keep it moving.
There goes that exercising that muscle though that we were talking about. Like
Right, right.
put yourself in the gym, give yourself moments of warm ups and exercises. So when it comes time to where you don't have the option to make a choice about how well you're going to execute on something, you've already built up the stamina to just deal with it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for this, Asher.
You're welcome. I'm glad I was able to be helpful instead of just ramble on and hear myself talk.
Oh, you made some really good points. Oh man, could you send me this recording?
Um, oh, this one?
Maybe by email or something, yeah.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I tried sending the last one out. I haven't received confirmation yet, but yeah, I'll
Okay.
go ahead and stop the recording now. That way it doesn't run too long and the file can be
Okay.
small. But appreciate you being on and
Okay.
entertaining this interview
Yeah, man.
slash
Thank you for
conversation.
having me. Seriously. Goodness, in the
Maybe
midst of
this
all
might
my
be a
business.
weekly thing.
That'd be
Call it,
awesome.
we'll
Yeah.
call it Car Talks with Mrs. Jones.
Yes, let's do it.